This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
Hello everyone, I want to welcome you back to the Ask Dr. Gibbs show on X-Zone Radio, xzbn.net. My show explores in depth and breadth 5 topical issues which are highly problematic. These issues are the prevention and treatment of heroin and opioid addiction. 2, suggestions for the training of police and citizens for the purpose of violence de-escalation. 3, a manual for first responders and other interested persons wanting to effectively manage anxiety, depression, frustration, and stress, often without the use of medication. I guarantee you, if that went into operation, half the cost of drugs would instantly evaporate. It's really a radical solution, which is very simple to implement and very cost effective. 4, answering questions for any of you who are considering entering some form of psychotherapy or psychoanalysis or what have you. These include, when does a person become a patient? What's the best method for me to go into? Is there a way to guarantee a perfect fit? And how does change come about? And maybe the most important is, what's the cost and how long is it going to last? And is there a guarantee? 5, bringing us to the continuing topic of today and the other 8 broadcasts, or the 7 broadcasts, is exploring in depth and breadth the nature of meaningful coincidences named synchronicities by Jung and their practical application. Today, I will continue discussing various themes associated with coincidences and synchronicities. If you followed my first 7 broadcasts, you will find the format of my show today is going to be significantly different. I'll do the main talking. I'm not going to have a guest today. However, I'm going to put it in question and answer form. During the last number of weeks, some of you have responded to my hope that you will send me in some questions, so I will look at them and see what are the most and if I can answer them and do it in some order that is exciting and informative. I have gotten a number of questions which I will begin to answer today. In researching this very interesting topic, which I've been doing for 50 years, almost 50 years, there does come many points along the way where you wonder what more can be said. Isn't everything been said? And of course, Jung has taken the position that whatever he wrote about in terms of understanding synchronicities is that's all. That's all she said. He said that because, from his perspective, eliminating causality as a linking principle between the inner event connected to the outer event, which is the structure of all synchronicities, he said that they cannot be explained rationally by cause and effect principles. Therefore, he threw out cause and effect, or conventional connections between inner and outer, or psychic determinism, which is what Freud indicated, that anything could be understood as a reaction to some cause. All linkages between inner and outer can be explained as understanding cause and effect. Since Jung said, and understandably said, that you can't use conventional causality to make that linkage, he threw it out. And what he replaced it with is a rather odd concept called acausality. And acausality is really a somewhat, I think, not so clever way of saying, look, there's a cause, but we don't really know what it is. And it's not conventional causality, so we're going to call it acausality, which of course leaves the pathway open that if somebody, in this case myself, comes along and says, no, wait a minute, maybe you have to relook at the way that you understand cause. And if there are different meanings to the and processes that could be indeed causal, but don't have to be necessarily unconventional causality, well, then maybe you can find a way to rationally explain the linkage between inner and outer. Now, of course, Jung says, no, you can't do that. You can't even conceive of a way to make a causal connection. And he offers three, what I call anti-causal arguments to promote his position. As I have said in past broadcasts, my work of almost 50 years is a rebuttal of what Jung says you can't rebut. And of course, that gets back to the point of what more can you possibly say about these things? Well, the truth of it is you could say plenty. Just as you think that you've put your arms around it and you've got all there is to talk about this thing, up springs another wrinkle and spurs more research and more interest. In that connection, the first question that I received, I guess we'll have to take a break at this point and I'll come back to the first question.
This is Johanna Carroll, host of Dialogue with Divinity on the X-Zone Broadcast Network. While walking along Kaanapali Beach in Maui this past year, I kept discovering all these shells and coral in the shape of hearts. My dialogue with Divinity was very simple. Do you want me to do a retreat to heal people's hearts in Maui next year? And of course, the answer was yes. As a master spiritual teacher, I am offering you a neat retreat called Rise, May 8th through the 12th, 2017, and the chance of a lifetime to rest at a 5-star resort for 5 days and experience a spiritual renewal of your heart and soul. Kaanapali is one of the top 5 beaches in the world. This stunning resort has undergone a $40 million renovation. I walked the entire property, checked out the room choices on your behalf, and I must say it is stunning. Our conference room faces the ocean with sliding glass doors. Maui is known as Mother Maui because it is a soft, gentle, healing energy. In the embrace of Mother Maui, you will feel yourself rising from the limitations of an ordinary life to an extraordinary journey of peace, bliss, and harmony. A greater sense of clarity. Our Rise retreat ignites renewal in the sacred elements of air, water, earth, fire, and wind. There's plenty of free time to enjoy all that Maui has to offer. A small deposit is required now to reserve your space, as this retreat, it will sell out. For more details, please go to johannacarroll.com and register today. Aloha, and I'll see you in mystical Maui.
How would you like to be able to read other people's minds? Well, the next best thing is here. When you know how to read a person's name, you know how the person thinks, feels, and behaves. Each letter in our name holds a key to unlock our true essence. Our name contains both our gifts and challenges in this lifetime. Mnemology science discovers personality secrets hidden in the placement of the letters of our names, including the first and last impression people remember about us. Sharon shows us how to interpret the arrangement of letters as outlined in her book, Know the Name, Know the Person. Sharon Lynn Wyeth created mnemology science after 18 years of research and testing her theories, and has supported thousands of people around the world in understanding themselves and others better. You'll enjoy Sharon's unique teachings as she shares her system to learn the gifts behind your given birth name. Even if you don't like your birth name, there are jewels in this book. If you're thinking of changing your name, ready to name your child, or wanting to get along better with others, this is the book for you. If you'd like to improve your relationships and change your life for the better, get the book today, Know the Name, Know the Person, or visit www.knowthename.com. That's www.knowthename.com.
Welcome back to the Ask Dr. Gibbs show, and segue on to the first question. Many of you, like myself, are interested as to the reasons for what appears to be the explosive interest in synchronicities, particularly so in the last decade. I think this is a very important point. I like the idea that behavior is purposeful, and it probably is no coincidence that right in this decade, there is as I said, an explosive surge of interest in this most interesting topic. Why now? From my evidence, when I first started to seriously research these phenomena about 10 years ago, I Googled in two key words, coincidences and synchronicities. The results were very interesting. For coincidences, there were approximately 5,000 entries. Now, if you plug it in today, there's 74,000 entries for coincidences. Now listen to the results for synchronicities. At the time, I don't frankly remember what I came up with, but I think it was decidedly low in terms of the statistics. I believe it was something like 500 entries then, 10 years ago. Now, there are 49,000. Just put the keyword synchronicities. That's explosive. More evidence is that if you go on to Amazon or Barnes & Noble and you look at the books on synchronicities and you look at the publishing dates, it's obvious that over the years, particularly recently, there have been, I would say, 6-7 books, new books on the subject each year, and they keep growing in frequency. It's a lot of books. I think there's probably over 300-400 and growing, of which I might plug my own book, which I believe is the best one out, called Demystifying Meaningful Coincidences or Synchronicities, The Evolving Self, the Evolving Self, I have forgotten the middle word, the Personal Unconscious, and the Creative Process. It's a big, thick book having to do with researching primarily patients in my psychoanalytic practice that I call synchronicity prone, and myself. It's very thorough, very comprehensive. It details theories of Jung and Freud, which are the major two theories in the marketplace. Jung dominates the field still by about 90% to 5%. So some of you are interested in this subject might want to know why I became an outlier in the 5 to 10% range. And that, to some extent, is the reason for me having this topic explored. When I first started, as I said, 10 years ago, to become seriously interested in researching this topic, I was aware that in beginning a journal that lasted 27 years, actually I think it was 37 years, that I began at 19, I realized that there was peppered through that period of time, I think over pretty much a 20-year period, I had what I recorded were, for me, 19 significant synchronicities, which I used to a great extent as the major material for this book. In addition, I had access to a number of my synchronicity-prone patients who, without my prompting, indicated they were interested in this topic. And I said, do you have any notes or journals or whatever? And practically everyone did, and they gave me their journals unsolicited. And I used their material in conjunction to my own, and that became the basis for this book, Demystifying Meaningful Coincidences. I think in terms of answering objectively the question of why now are these things so important, I'm a great believer in going to primary sources. If you want to do original research, go to the people who have them. And maybe you can intuit my next question. The best place, I think, to try to answer the question of why are these things so significant now is to consult yourselves. It is no coincidence, I would imagine, that if you stayed with me or just tuned in for the first time, obviously something about the subject matter must grab your attention. It isn't, I don't think, a coincidence that that's so. Now, how do you find out what it is that has prompted you to become interested in these things? Some of you to research them, some of you to just collect them and enjoy the seeming magic connected with it, or bathe in what Jung calls the uncanny feeling of numinosity. Some of you are going to be led to understand the implications, in which major one seems to be that they're messages from some transcendent realm of what people often feel is spiritualizing consciousness in outer reality, whatever that is. And others are going to be tempted to take these implications and answer questions such as, is it true? But Freud said, look to Jung, in which they both were interested in meaningful coincidences. As a matter of fact, they split over the interpretation of a major coincidence that they had in Freud's study, which I urge you, it's mentioned in depth in one of the broadcasts, but if you haven't read it, take a look at the interesting, in a way, deal breaker between Freud and Jung over the different interpretations of what Jung felt was going on in this shared synchronicity between Freud and Jung. Let's go back to your experience. I would urge you to do the following exercise, which you can't do now because you're listening to the program. But after it's over, if I can induce each of you to do the following, I think you'll get a great deal of meaning out of this. When you're finished and you have some time, sit down and ask yourself to record all of the synchronicities that you remember having. Some of you hopefully have kept a journal, which I urge you to do. A journal, unlike a diary, is a record of events that somehow seem significant to you, like a dream or something you heard, or some theory you have, virtually anything that you think is somewhat important. Write it down and make sure you date it. Then if and when you have a synchronicity, describe it in detail and fit it into the date that you have for the journal entries. This is invaluable for you in terms of your own personal research and really milking what I think is truly the rich material of synchronicities and the process of synchronicities. So let's say you've recorded a few, many, one synchronicity. If you will, go over them and see if you can remember, and probably will, the very first synchronicity that you had. And what you want to do is to put it in context. So by context, I mean, you were how old? Where did this event occur? If you happen to remember what was going on in your life, what were you preoccupied with? Did you have questions that were unanswered? Did you have big decisions to make that you were stuck? What have you? Anything having to do with psychological, sociological, philosophical, practical context is really very good. Second thing, go from the very first that you had to the most current synchronicity and describe that in detail. Also date it and put it into context. Then, out of the various ones you've had, if there are more than one, select that one particular synchronicity that you think somehow stands out from all the rest. So you have all that rich material. All right, now what are you going to do with it? What I do with it is to take a look and see if you can see some themes emerging that link each of these synchronicities. My guess is you, like me, if you look at the context out of which these things spring, you may find some remarkable plot or theme and variation out of which these things spring. At least that's what I did. I indicated in previous broadcasts that when I had my first major synchronicity, I haven't told you about this one, when I was 19 and a sophomore in college, and see if I can find the notes to this thing. At the time, let me give you a little bit of context. I was a sophomore. I was descending into my own darkness and depression. It was pretty deep. On the outside, I looked fine. I went to class. I made reasonably good grades. And I was actively participating on the crew and various things like that. But inwardly, I knew something was getting out of whack. And something that was getting out of whack was me. I wrote in my journal, I desperately sought unity and wholeness in the place of a protracted sense of division and chaos. Instead of lightness and freedom, there was a predominance of heaviness and constriction and transformation. I mainly experienced negative inertia expressed as tedious repetition. I felt I was stuck in the mud. I came to a grinding halt. I actively wished for a sign that significant change was possible. It was in this context of feeling quintessentially stuck that I recorded the first of what I considered to be 19 especially meaningful coincidences. I call this first one The Sun at Midnight. Now, be aware now, I'm 19. I am painting a picture in my room. The time is midnight. I'm alone in my dorm room at Columbia. I paint a picture of the sun bursting at night. I finish it and call it The Sun at Midnight. Checking the time, I see it is uncannily exactly midnight. Many of you who report synchronicities are aware of this interesting parallel between thinking a thought and hearing the same thought come from the outside or on the TV, or you look at the clock and it's 12 o'clock and you see 12 o'clock all over the place, and where the numbers 1 and 2 come up and you see 1 and 2 all over, and so forth. It's a typical run of synchronicities. Shortly after, in reading an occult book on the Upanishads, wherein I randomly came across a section describing the 4 basic elements, fire, air, earth, and water, I was shocked, noting that I had only a few minutes earlier just read about the same concept in a book called The Mystical Kabbalah. Now, what becomes important about this is not that these things happen all the time. It's the meaning you impute to it that become important, I think. So I wrote down my reaction. I experienced a sense of wholeness and meaningful connectedness, and the implications are that the experience reinforced feelings of being in contact with a spiritual force. Now, that's not new, is it? That many people who have these things are convinced that they are messages from some transcendent realm of external reality, which they often believe is spiritualized. And it is the flavor of what Jung's take on synchronicities is all about. In his work with patients, He differed greatly from Freud, who essentially believed that everybody was essentially, that symptoms or people come into treatment are essentially hung up, usually with problems of sexuality and or aggression, and it stems from early childhood. So if you can get back to the inevitable traumas that make for these symptoms and get people to talk openly about it and connect their feelings with their thoughts and work these problems through, the symptoms will disappear. Jung, on the other hand, said, well, he's got a point. However, not with the patients he saw, nor himself. Didn't have the problems that Freud had or thought were the basis for neurosis.
While science pursues fact, magic accesses the quantum level, bridging random facts to form truth. As long as science and magic remain separate and polarized, the truth cannot be known. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka. Join me on the Science of Magic radio program, dedicated to unification and evolution of consciousness. During each episode, I'll be speaking with experienced and respected scientists and mystics. From astrologers to astronomers, from medical doctors to shaman, the scientific method to dowsing and intuition, we'll weave together information from seemingly divergent practices to promote unity and enlightenment. Join me, Gwilda Wiyaka, and the Science of Magic right here on the Mutual Broadcast Network. For more information, visit www.thescienceofmagic.net.
Gibbs A. Williams, Ph.D., is a practicing psychoanalyst, supervisor, researcher, and author in New York City. Much of his life has been dedicated to understanding nature and the uses of meaningful coincidences or synchronicities. His radical and original non-Jungian, non-mystical, non-magical theory of synchronicities illuminates much of the fog surrounding this challenging and perplexing topic. His ideas and manners are fresh, presented in a style that is both entertaining and highly informative. He is also an expert on crisis intervention, specially focused on violence reduction for the police and citizens, mastering anxiety, frustration, and stress without the use of medication, and effectively preventing and treating heroin addiction. Dr. Williams can be contacted at his email address at gwwilliamsny11@aol.com or visit his website at.
Wouldn't you love to know the secret to everything? Well then, meet Dr. Kimberly McGeorge and her cutting-edge breakthrough knowledge that combines science with possibility. Dr. Kimberly brings real-life answers and healing to those open to alternative solutions. She teaches solution-based programs and classes that will change all areas of your life forever. Specializing in conscious creation, intuitive readings, and energy medicine, you can rapidly shift health, relationships, business, and money and abundance challenges quickly. Receive her best-selling book, Secret to Everything, at no cost by going to secrettoeverything.com/X-Zone. That's right, transformation can start now. Just go to secrettoeverything.com/X-Zone and receive Dr. Kimberly's book for free.
Afterlife expert Roberta Grimes was the first one to say that dying can be fun. Now her best-selling book, The Fun of Dying, is available in stores worldwide. So if you wonder whether death ends life, how it feels to die, or what heaven might be like, The Fun of Dying was written for you. And if you have always been afraid of death, or if you worry that your life has no meaning, let The Fun of Dying ease your fears and bring new meaning to your life. Nothing said in The Fun of Dying is based on the teachings of any religion. Instead, Roberta draws on evidence to explain how death happens, how it feels, and what comes next. A lot of the best death-related evidence was produced in the first half of the 20th century. When it is put together with recent discoveries, it tells a consistent and amazing story. Roberta Grimes blogs and answers questions at robertagrimes.com. Her wonderful book, The Fun of Dying.
On a jazzy note, we return back to Ask Dr. Gibbs online, XZBN from Toronto, Canada. The reason why I asked you to record as many synchronicities as you can is that I believe if you will look at them, certain themes and variations of themes will snap out. And those are very important clues as to what I believe is the secret meaning or the hidden meaning of your various synchronicities. So, for example, my first synchronicity, as I said, was when I was 19 years old at Columbia and feeling very detached and I think really sick and depressed and empty and confused and so forth. Not terribly unusual for sophomores. If people are going to break down, they tend to break down either in the sophomore year of high school or the sophomore year of college. So it's pretty natural. A lot's going on. You gotta, you're away from home, you're on your own, nobody's usually telling you what to do. You gotta make big decisions. You gotta think about what are you gonna be, what are you gonna major in, passing tests and showing up and dating and whatever. It's a tough period. If you gave me $1 million and you said, all I want you to do is to repeat my years of 19 to 22, I would say, keep your money, I don't want it. That's a horrible experience, just awful. Moving on then, from 19 to my second major synchronicity. That's important. The gap in time. I probably had other coincidences that went on, but for me, I selected the second one, which I had referred to as the Lazarus synchronicity, Lazarus rising. It happened 7 years later when I was 26 years old. That's when I recorded it in my journal. So the passage of time in terms of recording these events was probably about 4 pages. So I went from 19 years old to 26. You can do that in a journal. You don't have to be faithful to it's not a diary, it's a journal of what you believe are important events. And it's good that you select out this other stuff. You don't need it. So, to recapitulate what was going on when I had the Lazarus Rising. I went into depth in one of the programs. I'm not going to repeat the whole thing, but it may be noted that I had failed 2 attempts at psychotherapy. It just didn't work. I left essentially feeling the same way I did when I went into both of them. And I stumbled upon what I call the lure of the occult, in which I was introduced to esoteric astrology and Kabbalah and so forth, and the First United Church of New York City, where I met some very fascinating, interesting people, some mediums and psychiatrists who went into trance and purportedly channeled messages or poetry from Freud and Jung. It was a high-level group. This is really interesting. And I was a very mixed up and confused person who, by this time, really sought out guidance wherever I could find it. I felt as if I were a revolving wheel that was going nowhere fast, and I was stuck in a negative inertia. I couldn't often start to do what I wanted to do, and I often couldn't stop doing what I didn't want to do. I was quintessentially stuck. It was in this context that I got invited to become a member of a consciousness-raising group, in which I went, and I indicated that I had this rather remarkable experience of seeing in the dark what I felt was a grandmotherly face with granny glasses. And Agatha, the 80-year-old medium, looked at me and she says, well, whose glasses do they belong to? As I was sitting in a circle among 10 people, and I turned to my right, and I was turned on to this girl, and I facetiously said, spontaneously, oh, they obviously belong to, let's call her Margaret's grandmother. And she said, why? And I said, because they're granny glasses. And Margaret chimed in, and she says, yeah, you're right. I have them on my counter at home. So I was all jazzed up. I was excited. And then as I left the group, I had already indicated that I wanted to try to answer absolute or very complicated questions about reality. I wanted answers. And somebody said, here, I'll give you a method. Go home, and if you have a New Testament, which I had, open it up at random, ask your question, and read the first thing that comes to your mind. So I did, and the first thing that came to mind, my question was, are miracles real, or are they baloney? And I open it up, and the first thing I see in my mind's eye is the story of the raising of Lazarus. Well, I got really excited. That's a pretty good hit. And I used it as a reason for calling Margaret. And I called Margaret and I said, I got this most unbelievable coincidence. And she says, wait, before you give me yours, let me give you mine. And I said, okay. And she said, I'm figuring how she's going to beat that. And she did. She said during that afternoon, when we had met at night, she was out in Central Park walking with her psychiatrist, this very unconventional man who I had mentioned, often went into trance and seemingly dictated poetry from Freud and Jung. Quite a feat if that were true. And he said, listen carefully, that in a past life, the psychiatrist said in all seriousness, he was at the raising of Lazarus. Well, that's a pretty good synchronicity. That's hard to beat. Let me put this phone back on the hook. And I was jumping for joy. I was extraordinarily excited. Now, the importance of that run of synchronicities, starting with the ovular mirror, the picture of the vision of the grandmotherly face, and the hit with Margaret's granny glasses, and she's saying she had them, and the biblical allusion to the raising of Lazarus, and the telephone call to Margaret, and her telling me about the raising of Lazarus with her psychiatrist and so forth. That really, if I had never really been interested in synchronicities before, that did it. I was enthralled. The meaning of it, my reaction was intense awe and excitement. The implications for me, in my journal I write, I feel as if I'm in contact with a mystery that holds the probability of divine guidance. Coincidences appear to be connected with an unseen occult realm of reality that is spiritualized. Whatever else these events may mean, they add breadth and depth and point to something higher and more meaningful than most events experienced in my rather ordinary life. A significant reverberation of this remarkable event was my heightened attention in taking note of both my own as well as others' meaningful coincidences. There was no question in my mind that they were indeed remarkable events, particularized by the felt experience of special meaning that characterized them. Okay, this obviously continues on, as yours will, to 17 more that were juicy and big time as far as I was concerned, and pregnant with meaning that fascinated me enough to begin to seriously investigate the nature and uses of these remarkable events. Now, just by hearing the two of them that started this off, it is clear that there are parallel themes and variations. I was mixed up, I was confused, I wanted guidance. It seemed to fail on the earth plane, that I guess I was attracted to the possibility through occultism and spirituality to the possibility of, let's call it, divine guidance. And if there was any pathway to it, lead me on to it. I want to do it. And so I took lessons in occult pathways and astrology and tarot and Kabbalah, and met religiously with these interesting people at Sunday church with mediums and messages and so on. And I got really enthralled with what I call the lure of the occult. It also appealed to me because it addressed my whole self rather than me as a collection of neurons or psychological problems and so on. And that became the basis for my, what turned out to be almost 50-year research of these fascinating experiences. Now, over time, obviously, I don't have the same attitudes to what these things are now. I don't look to the stars at all. I don't think that these messages are from any external place. My theory is that they're self-generated. Now, how did I make the leap from essentially being a de facto Jungian to rejecting that out of hand? And while I don't have any, you choose your own, different strokes for different folks, it's okay, but I'm allowed to choose my own too. So that in my asking questions of Jung and rebutting what he thought were unrebuttable arguments, that you can't rationally conceive of a way of making causal sense out of the link between the inner and outer events that comprise the structure of all synchronicities. What I did mainly, to jump the gun, was to go into an 11-year psychoanalysis where perhaps the major thing that I learned was how to stimulate my critical thinking, which led directly to what I believe was turning on what I think everybody has as their own unique creative process. And of course, in my title of my book, the second half is the demystification part occurs, I think, when you are able to have an idea of who you really are, who is yourself, and what does that really mean, combined with making a felt connection between your personal unconscious, not the collective unconscious of Jung, but your personal unconscious, and how that directly leads into a connection with what I believe is your own idiosyncratic creative process. So that, I guess what I'm saying is, if you will look at your own material, and you keep a journal, and you will see over time what your core beliefs are. Now the second question is, why am I, it directly leads from the first, why am I seemingly maybe overly concerned with theory and not get close enough to, or quickly enough to, the meat? Like, what do you do with these things? Many will feel like, isn't this agonizingly slow? Why don't you just, what's all this intellectual stuff? Why don't you just, jump into it and tell me what to do with synchronicities? Well, fine, but it's not that simple. My experience is that you take a look at anything and you can find alternative meanings to virtually anything. For example, please each of you answer the question. 1 + 1 equals 2. All right, look again. 1 + 1 from another angle, from another context, could equal, try 11, the number 11. Well, look again. From still another angle, 1 + 1 might equal 3. Take the idea of father, potential mother, have sex, and they are likely to produce a third child, and then the child becomes equated with the number 1. You get the point. You can do that with anything. We will continue to the last segment in a moment.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
I am Dr. Carl O'Helvey, founder, president of a new cancer foundation focusing on evidence-based physical, mental, and spiritual interventions, including natural cancer cures, prayer, meditation, affirmations, nutrition, and other related holistic cancer prevention and cure modalities. These are used in cancer education, research, and financing care. I ask for your help to continue this important work by donating at www.holisticcancerfoundation.com.
Wouldn't you love to know the secret to everything? Well then, meet Dr. Kimberly McGeorge and her cutting-edge breakthrough knowledge that combines science with possibility. Dr. Kimberly brings real-life answers and healing to those open to alternative solutions. She teaches solution-based programs and classes that will change all areas of your life forever. Specializing in conscious creation, intuitive readings, and energy medicine, you can rapidly shift health, relationships, business, and money and abundance challenges quickly. Receive her best-selling book, Secret to Everything, at no cost by going to secrettoeverything.com/X-Zone. That's right, transformation can start now. Just go to secrettoeverything.com/X-Zone and receive Dr. Kimberly's book for free.
What Happened in Benghazi is revealed by Nicholas Genix, author of Obama, Islam, and Benghazi. He informs the American people that President Obama deceived them by advocating a strong foreign policy prior to the 2012 presidential election, and Hillary Clinton supported this deception. As the title infers, there is a connection between Obama, Islam, and Benghazi. Ample evidence informs Americans that Obama's early indoctrination in the Quran developed an affinity for Islam, why the Quran is the source of discontent in many countries, and why the Obama foreign policy deception led to poor military action and caused the loss of American lives in Benghazi. Genix provides 36 questions for the Select Committee on Benghazi to validate if Americans are justified to mistrust President Obama and Hillary Clinton. An overview of Obama, Islam, and Benghazi is presented on the website www.futureofgodamen.com. That's www.futureofgodamen.com. You're listening to the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net.
Welcome you back to the final segment of the Ask Dr. Gibbs show. I had stopped at a point where I indicated that anything, any perception, idea, thought, what have you, can be viewed in a different context, resulting in entirely different meanings. And that's precisely what Freud and Jung did with respect to their different versions of synchronicity theory. And there are different versions of therapy, and there are different versions of what symptoms are, virtually everything. The special meaning associated with coincidences which make a coincidence into a synchronicity is the special meaning attributed to the event. Where's the special meaning come from? It has to come from the individual self who's generating the special meaning. So, for example, listen to the incredibly different 180-degree perspectives with respect to answering the meaning of life. Two quotes, one by Jung and one by Freud. Jung says, "My whole being was seeking for something still unknown that might confer meaning upon the banality of life." The banality of life. Ergo, his idea that there's got to be something transcendent, got to be something extra special, which he calls spirituality, which is really otherworldly and out of this mundane world. This mundane was, from his vantage point, basically a pain. And he wanted to escape into, I guess, pleasure. Whereas, listen to the same idea with respect to, or the same interest with respect to Freud, who says the outcome of a significant psychoanalysis is for the patient to be able to convert a neurotic suffering into an acceptance of everyday common misery. Okay, I heard the yells. Freud's cynical and he's not spiritual and so on. No, I think he's got it. What he is saying is everything is on this earth plane. That's all you really got. And everything else is a projection into fantasy about what you would like there to be, including heaven and hell and all the rest of it. That the final issue, I think, or the most important issue in the experience of synchronicities, if you're really serious about this stuff, it really forces you to deal with the biggest questions of life, such as, who am I? What do I want? Why am I here? Is there a meaning for me? Or is it to be discovered or created? Who's responsible for it? How do I know? All that kind of stuff. That's really deep. It also, I think, addresses what I believe is the most fundamental question of being alive, which is, who is your ultimate authority figure? It is either a projection of authority in the form of what? God, or the unknown, or science, or religion, or love, or what have you. It could be anything. Or it is ultimately you and your own experience of what life is about based upon what you have managed to learn and the way you add up all the things that are important into your own personal philosophy. I stand with the latter. Most Jungians go with the former. Now, that's fine. Different strokes for different folks. What has this got to do with theory building? As I said before, many of you are going to take the position of, look, get to the meat and potatoes of this thing. Tell me what to do with these synchronicities and how to interpret them. Well, it's not so simple. You can't do it or you shortchange yourself. The different theories come out of the theorist's own perception as to what is real. What am I talking about? What I've learned over my 50 years, near 50 years of researching is that different synchronicity theories will be derived primarily from the basic primary philosophical assumptions made about the nature of reality, how we have knowledge of reality, and what that knowledge is, in addition to certain primary assumptions about various knowledge bases, including depth psychology, the esoteric occult, spirituality, and particularly scientific method. You can add others into the mix, but those are the essential ones that I'm talking about. Now, why is that important? Because depending upon your basic assumptions about these primary philosophical issues and the rest of the knowledge bases are going to be derived alternative organizing concepts which are going to be utilized as filters of experience, which is going to be able to organize the chaos that you have, which ultimately lead to various interpretations and utilizations of synchronistic phenomena. In the next and probably last segment with respect to synchronicities, I will finally get to the meat and potatoes and give you an overview as the primary differences between Freud's theory and Jung's theory, and most important, how to interpret your own synchronicities and what to do with them. I hope what I have done, or I'm doing, is to stimulate you all to get really interested in this subject. And I like the idea of Yates, who indicated that with respect to seemingly dealing with all this esoteric stuff, that the longest, actually it's not Yates, it's Ulysses, it's who wrote Ulysses, that the longest way round is the shortest way home. I concur with Spinoza, who said anything worth accomplishing is as difficult as it is rare. So I hope you will indulge in my seemingly endless speculations. It's been a wonderful experience. In the future, I'm going to start tackling how to manage your own anxiety, depression, stress, and other negative feelings without the use of medication. I think it's a huge issue, and as I said before, if this idea got adopted, half the cost of the drugs would disappear. And I think that they'll never let this idea be wide-ranging for the reasons why I just said, the profit motive. But this idea really works, and I hope you will all tune in and invite your friends to be part of it. Thank you very much for listening. And if, once again, you're interested in looking at my book, go on Amazon, plug in Gibbs Williams, and you will see Demystifying Meaningful Coincidences, the rest of the title. You can also go to Facebook and look at my website on Ask Dr. Gibbs. In addition to which, if you want to reach me personally, please use my email address, which is gibbsonline.com, back over that. Ask, what do I have? A email address. gwilliams@ny11 care of AOL.com. Please send me, hopefully, your questions, which you can also ask on Facebook. And if you want to plug into the 8 previous broadcasts, go to YouTube, plug in my name, Gibbs Williams, and it will bring you to the broadcast, which you can download and hopefully enjoy. Thank you very much for listening. I appreciate your being here. And if you have any suggestions, good, bad, or indifferent, I will be very open to them. And if you have interest in other areas, please do not hesitate to suggest them to me. I look forward to meeting you in the future. And please tell your friends and loved ones and shout it out to the world that this is an interesting broadcast, hopefully, and I invite you and tons of people to listen. Thank you very much, and I will say adieu.